Canon has released not one, not two, but 3 videos while you were sleeping. I'll let you know all about them now that you're awake.
Oh my God, here we go. I'm probably f***ing paying you to say this right now. God knows you don't have your own opinions.
This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Let's start off with exactly what you want to hear. Canon has released a new camera, a new lens, and a new flash. This video is gonna go over the camera and the flash, and I have a whole separate video about the 135 RF 135f 1.8L IS USM lens because it's a beauty and I love the EF version so much, but I'm just gonna throw it in the garbage or sell it.
Oh my God, you with that lens.
We're gonna talk about the camera and the flash in this video, but the lens gets its whole separate video because the EF version was something I adored. You know I'm gonna like it. It gets a separate video. So let's talk about the flash because I'm gonna make you watch the flash until I tell you about the camera.
Yeah.
Now I know you might not be that excited about a flash, but this brand new EL-5 is really very similar to the 600EX version, but less expensive. It has the same power. It has the same dust and weather resistance, but it only works in digital hot shoes, like the hot shoes on the R3, R7, R10, and the brand new R6 Mark II, which we'll get to in a bit.
Tell me more about the camera you love.
At $399, this flash is a steal for professional photographers and more obtainable for those just starting out with more entry-level gear. But the favorite thing is not actually for the photographers. The best thing about this flash is for the videographers. Because there isn't an optical transmitter on the front, it's nice and clean, but what's also missing is the focus assist. With the mirrorless cameras, you don't need the focus assist, and instead what you have are these 2 LED light beams, which are white, which will help you focus if you need it and not throw that grid or the red lines across the room onto someone's face as the videographer is trying to film and they're like, what the heck is that red crap all over their face? Well, there's no more red crap anymore. If you need the focus assist with this flash, it's 2 white LEDs and it won't piss anyone off.
Yeah, that's believable.
Let's face it, that's why you're watching this video. You want to hear all about the brand new Canon EOS R6 Mark II. Easy for me because I've been using Squarespace for over a decade and you can see it at vanessajoy.com. I decided to use Squarespace so long ago because it was and still is one of the easiest ways to make a website out there, hands down. Squarespace is a platform where you can create beautiful custom websites in just a few minutes. Choose from a plethora of templates where you can easily plug and play your own work. It's an all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. We all know that an online presence is crucial for your brand, so build one that stands out. Head over to this link for my exclusive 10% discount on your first domain at Squarespace. Now back to the video. Let's start off what this camera is not. It does not have the same sensor as the Canon EOS R3. I know a lot of people were thinking about that, and Canon Rumors just loves to make us talk, but it's not true.
Don't you talk bad about Canon Rumors. Do you know what that guy went through? I don't want to hear his name in your mouth.
It differs from the R3 in the fact that the megapixels are 24.2, it's not stacked, and it's not backside illuminated. It's a unique sensor to this camera alone, for now. It is, however, pulling from the R3 autofocus system that is just so darn good, and then a little bit more. It has more of a deep learning technology, and in addition to all the eye tracking, face recognition, vehicle recognition, they've added more things like being able to track a horse's face and a train, in addition to the airplane and helicopter, moving vehicles, cars, pretty much whatever you want to photograph, the autofocus system can track it for you.
Oh, you like the autofocus? Shocking.
You also have the ability to turn the tracking system to auto. The auto subject tracking will track objects that are larger in size, closer to the center of the frame, or a person or an entity that is the main subject in the previous photo that you took. That's nice. One more thing about the focusing system, I know I'm harping on this, but honestly, focusing systems make all the difference in the world when you are shooting. You now can choose to focus on the left eye or the right eye. That was that their left? That was my left. That was my right. We're not gonna go there. With a quick tap of a customized button, maybe the depth of preview button, you can switch from right eye to left eye or not have any preference enabled at all. I I have to say, that feature alone is gonna make a Canon EOS R5 user like me a little bit jealous. Canon is calling this camera the camera for photographers that want to do a lot of things well. What does that mean? It means it's doing photo and video pretty darn well, so let's get into some of the video specs.
Oh, video! Oh, here we go. You're gonna talk to me about video? Do you even f***ing take video? You only f***ing take photos. Stay in your lane, bitch.
You have the option to shoot externally using ProRes RAW 6K 60 at 10-bit or 3.7K 60 at 12-bit. The Canon R6 Mark II also has a 4K UHD, which is 6K oversampled, so you've got some killer quality when it comes to your video. There's no crop at 4K 60. You can shoot full HD 120 to get the slow motion in. Now on paper, the heat limitations for continuous video recording are actually better than the R5. At 4K 60, you have 40 minutes or more versus the R5 is 30. Now, of course, that's on paper. Depending on your conditions, how you're shooting, what all of your settings are, you may find that it varies. But it is interesting that this camera on paper technically has about 10 more minutes of continuous video recording time before you hit any heat limitations. If you want to shoot C-Log3 422 10-bit, you can do that internally using card slot 2. Speaking of card slots, you've got two, and they're both SD card slots, so you don't have to buy any expensive new cards. Also, you don't have to buy any batteries either. It takes the same battery as the R6 or the 5D4, you know, that LP-E6NH. There's also a lot of other things that you want, like in-body stabilization, of course, combination optical stabilization if you have a lens that has image stabilization, and digital IS as well. You can also enable for 3 to 5 seconds a movie pre-recording, which is going to, right before you press and officially record, capture a little bit before you did in case maybe you missed something. It saves your butt. And by the way, it has that in photo mode as well, and we'll get to that right after I tell you the last thing about video that I thought was very, very cool. It has a detect-only autofocus. Stay with me here. You're filming a person. You focus on them and they go out of frame. What happens if you're in autofocus? It immediately snaps to the background, but you don't necessarily want that. You might want to have that background still blurred and then have your subject walk into frame. Well, now that's possible without going into manual focus. So the camera will wait or stop focusing if the subject that it was focused on leaves the frame. It's not going to bounce to the background. Instead, it's going to wait for the subject to come in and find the focus on them right when they enter frame. Pretty cool. I can't wait to see how this works. The R6 Mark II has some new aspect markers, which is very helpful since we have to shoot in all these different aspect ratios for social media. So it has a vertical 16:9, it has a 1:1 square, and then it has CinemaScope 2.35:1. I was supposed to stop talking about video, but they really did add a ton of video in here. You have zebraing, you have false color, you can tell right there on the screen if you're blowing out the whites or crunching the blacks. Definitely helpful for run and gun shooting. Let's run through the rest of the specs about the camera. You have a digital hot shoe. The focus button on the back, that custom button, is just a little bit different, a little bit more comfy, easier to use. You can shoot at up to 12 frames per second mechanical or up to 40 electronic.
Oh, you're talking to Jared Poland about this. Well, let me tell you what I think about that son of a bitch.
In the camera, there's new image processing that achieves superior resolution processing than even the 5D Mark IV at 30 megapixels. So even though it's a smaller sensor, Canon is saying that the image quality is better than some of their larger sensor cameras.
Oh, you got Manny Ortiz's photos in here? Well, let me tell you how he holds the camera. Like, this is gonna help. Your IBIS isn't gonna do when you're holding it out like this, Manny, so take that.
There's some pretty innovative HDR capabilities in the R6 Mark II that's going to help you shoot things like sports and wildlife like never before. Now, instead of just having an HDR mode, you have a moving subject HDR. Basically, when you're shooting in HDR and it's taking multiple frames to get all of the exposure that it needs, if you have a moving subject, you're going to see a little bit of ghosting. But now it has moving subject HDR, and with technology that even the people that work for Canon don't even know, it's able to give you a beautiful crisp file, HDR captured even with moving subjects. Nobody knows how, but they're doing it. You do have to shoot at a minimum of 800 ISO, but that leads into us talking about the low light capabilities of this camera. It's pretty darn good. In fact, some would even say that while this camera is not necessarily better than the R3 in low light, it is better than the R5 because of the pixel density. So you're going to be able to shoot at really high ISOs with very little difficulty in low light. And again, another thing to make an R5 user like me a little bit jealous.
Everything you say is just complete horse because you don't know what you're talking about because you're not a real photographer. You are a real photographer, but you only talk about Canon. I don't understand. Why can't you just be a walking camera manual like all these other YouTubers? They can tell me every little thing I need to know and everything I don't need to know.
Hey, can you stop right there and I can tell you just a little secret?
Oh my God, she's wearing that black dress again.
I have something called Photo Insiders that you might want to be a part of. Photo Insiders is a master educational community for photographers where you will learn the ins and outs of things like posing, lighting, flash, continuous lighting, and a mix of all of them. With new educational videos every single month, behind the scenes and on location shoots with real clients, not models. This is just fun stuff. Watch how I troubleshoot my way out of situations. Did that flash? See my camera settings and see my images raw as they come out of the camera. Exclusive content that you will not see anywhere else. High-speed sync allows you to raise... You could watch a million YouTube videos and still not get your questions answered. But within the community of Photo Insiders, you'll be able to ask your questions that I will answer in live group coaching calls. Never feel lost or frustrated behind the camera again, but instead confidently create the photos that you envision every single time. Inside the community, you can also talk shop and collaborate with other photographers so you can not only elevate your craft together, but boost your marketing and overall business too. You'll have access to all of my bonus materials, things like contracts and my email templates that are sure to put money in the bank. I wish I had something like this 20 years ago when I first started learning photography. Join my exclusive community at Photo Insiders and learn alongside a group of creatives that are going to help you elevate your craft. See you there. Comparing the battery life of the R6 Mark II to its predecessor, the R6, you use the same battery, but you're going to get a longer battery life out of it. With the R6, you were getting about 510 shots, or in smooth EVF, which is what I always shoot in, about 360. But with the R6 Mark II, if you're in the power-saving EVF mode, you're going to get about 760 shots, or the smooth, 580. So that's a pretty big jump. That's like another 40% battery life. There's a very cool raw burst mode with pre-recording where you can shoot in RAW 30 frames in 1 second, and it's going to pre-record a half a second of that. So as you press halfway down on the shutter, it's continuously pre-recording a half a second and then dumping it, I guess, before you press down the shutter all the way. And once you press down the shutter all the way, yes, you get those clicks, but you get a half a second of clicks before then. So it's anticipating action and capturing it in a way a human can't. It's like Minority Report precognition. Ultimately, what happens is it gives you an option, almost like a live view in an iPhone, and you can pick which frame you want right there in the camera menu. Something new for the pro Canon mirrorless lines that you've actually seen in Canon's point-and-shoot cameras is panoramic mode. Pretty much just like you would photograph a panoramic with a phone, the R6 can do exactly the same thing, taking the picture as you move slowly across. It's also in the R7 and the R10. They snuck it in there, no one really talked about it. Focus bracketing and depth compositing. What the heck is that? Well, for me, that comes into play when I have to shoot macro shots of wedding rings. And usually they're in pretty less than ideal circumstances and low light. And because I don't want to shoot a ring or any macro shot really at 2.8, I want to shoot it closer to like f7.1, I need to usually raise my ISO really high and lower my shutter. And while there is image stabilization in my macro lens, I really don't want to go lower than 1/100th of a second when I'm using a 100mm macro. Focus bracketing and depth compositing, you are able to take a picture, preferably still at somewhere around 7.1, and it will bracket the focusing and combine the image into a JPEG, which isn't a big deal. Usually macro, you've got control over your exposure and you're not going to need to bring back highlights or anything like that. That's a really great feature because you certainly can't in post-production bring back the focus. So using this feature will allow you to take a photo for me would be with a macro lens, and then have the focus as if it moved through multiple planes of focus in your image, combines it all together to give you a super crisp, very large range of depth of field. There's improved stickiness in the autofocus, meaning it's just gonna find that eyeball or vehicle and stick to it no matter how much movement is happening, which is something we all want when we're having autofocus that's tracking moving subjects. If you're used to the R6, you are going to have a very similar form factor, but there are some new features.
Oh, you can compare it to the R6? Why can't you compare it to something like Sony or Nikon or Panasonic? I know why, because you're paid by Canon and you can't talk about anything about how they're God's gift to photographers.
Gina, what are you screaming about down there?
Would you just take care of the kids and shut the up? I'm working here. Finale, eh?
The new power switch location might drive you insane because it's not just like at your thumb. Canon did that, I'm assuming, because they want to make sure that you don't accidentally turn your camera off. So it's in a little bit different of a spot, just in front of the dial that's on the top of the camera. The multi-controller has a slightly new shape. It's a little bit easier to grab, a little bit softer. And you have a photo movie switch, so you don't have to go into a mode to go and switch from photo to video. Now you've got a switch, you can do it really easily. There's one more baby feature of the Canon R6 Mark II that I want to talk about. Now, it's not going to apply to a lot of people, but for me, where I do same day edits and I'm constantly connecting my camera to my phone to do that, this improvement is a big one for me. There is MFI cable connectivity. So if you have an iPhone, you can get an Anker 514 cable, which allows you to plug your camera directly into your phone's lightning port and download the photos that way. That's nice, so you don't have to use the Canon Connect app like I do.
Oh, what? I'm supposed to take some advice from you? You're a Canon ambassador. What the do you know?
But if you would like to use the Canon Connect app to transfer photos right to your mobile device, that just got easier too. And I know a lot of you, and me myself, have had our frustrations with connecting cameras to the Canon Connect app. They've heard you and they're improving it. By the way, if you have an Android device, your life is a lot easier and you can connect the camera just using any USB cord right from the camera to your phone, and then it opens up your gallery and you can drag some photos in. Now, the Canon R6 Mark I version is $24.99. So of course the Canon R6 Mark II is going to be a lot more expensive. Actually, it's not. It is also $24.99. So it's a no-brainer. If you don't have the R6 or the R6 Mark II, you're gonna get the R6 Mark II. And best part, it's shipping later this month. Their expected shipping is late November, so you can get this in time for Christmas and the holidays. Oh, the flash is also shipping, I believe, in late November. Now the lens, not till January. But make sure you watch the video coming out later this week all about the lens, because I have a lot to say about it.
You know, how about you talk to me about how heavy it is? When I bring it to Bahrain, am I going to be able to hold a drink in that hand too?
So that's what we have. 3 Canon new products. We talked about the EL-5, we talked about the R6 Mark II, and you can watch a whole video about the brand new RF135 f1.8 image stabilized lens. I'll see you there. Make sure you hit subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss that video coming out in just a little bit. See you next time.
Whatever, it might be a good camera, but I don't think I'm going to take it to the shore.